to observe a moment of silence for prayer or meditation. Thank you very much. Let me take this opportunity to remind delegates that the rules apply and the process for the virtual setting, whatever processes and so on apply. So the rules and processes apply. Before we proceed, I would like to remind you of the following. The virtual sitting constitutes a sitting of the National Council of Provinces. The place of the sitting is deemed to be Cape Town, where the seat of the National Council of Provinces is. Delegates in the virtual sitting enjoy the same powers and privileges that apply in a sitting of the National Council of Provinces. For the purpose of the quorum, all delegates who are logged in or on to the virtual platform shall be considered to be present. Delegates must always switch on their videos. Delegates should ensure that the microphones on the gadgets are muted and must always remain muted. The interpretation facility is active, and any delegate who wishes to speak must use the raise your hand function. And by now, I'm sure all members are familiar with the raise your hand function or icon. I've been told that there'll be no notices or motions notices in terms of Council Rule 247. We will therefore proceed to questions to the President. But before we proceed, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome the President. Welcome, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Further, I would like to make the following remarks. The time for reply by the President to a question is 5 minutes. Only 4 supplementary questions are allowed per question, and the 4 includes the person who shall have asked the initial question. A member who has asked the initial question would be the first to be afforded an opportunity to ask a supplementary question. And the time for asking supplementary question is 2 minutes, and the time for reply to a supplementary question is 4 minutes. A supplementary question or the supplementary question must emanate from the initial question. I will now proceed to the first question on the question paper. And that question is asked by Honorable S.E. Lucas. I now call on the Honorable President to respond to question number 1. Honorable President.
Honorable Chairperson of the Council of Provinces and honorable members, before I begin, allow me to express my appreciation to the honorable members for agreeing to the postponement of the question session scheduled for the 15th of October to accommodate me with regard to the special joint session of Parliament, where we presented the economic recovery plan. I apologize if this caused any inconvenience. I'm grateful that you have given me the opportunity today to reply to the questions posed by honorable members. On the first question from Honorable Lucas, the violence that men perpetrate against women of South Africa is a crisis that affects the entire nation. Although no community is spared from this scourge, government has identified several so-called hotspots where the incidence of gender-based violence is at its highest. Government is working to give these areas specific attention. One of the most direct responses is to provide shelter and support for survivors of gender-based violence so that they can escape unsafe environments where they find themselves and receive the care that they need. From an assessment of the current provision of shelters in all districts and metros, we found that while the country has 136 shelters, only 117 are deemed as shelters that have been established. 45 of our districts and metros have at least one shelter, while 7 districts have no shelter whatsoever. This is a shortfall that we are now working on to correct. As we said, that we want every district in our country to have a place of safety for women who are abused and children who are also abused. The Department of Public Works and Infrastructure has allocated several properties across the country for use as shelters. These include 4 properties in Tshwane Metro, 6 properties in the Western Cape, and 2 in Johannesburg. Additional properties to be allocated for shelter purposes are being assessed in all other provinces. I personally welcome this gesture from the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure because they have demonstrated their willingness to go out of their way to make available a number of buildings that are not in much use. We are focused on efforts to ensure there is a model GBV one-stop center in each of the identified 30 hotspot areas. These centers provide multidisciplinary services such as psychological and health support. They also provide investigation and prosecution. But more than that, they also are becoming places of assistance at an economic level for women and also help with housing problems as well. We are therefore working to expand the Khuseleka one-stop centers. In the first phase in Cape Town, Salt Lake Municipality, eThekwini, Mangaung, eHlanzeni, Tshwane, and Johannesburg. In the second phase, we will identify buildings in the Eastern Cape, in the Northwest, and Limpopo to enhance the existing Khuseleka centers and expand on sheltering services in the provinces. As these shelters are being expanded, the government has developed a victim support services bill as part of the enhancement of legislation to focus on victims of crime and violence. The draft bill has gone out for public comment, and the Department of Social Development is now consolidating the inputs received from the public. The bill is victim-centered and touches on the importance of state-owned facilities and the accreditation of providers of sheltering services. This, in many ways, will ensure that service providers are qualified to provide professional services to survivors. As part of our response to the coronavirus pandemic, each minister and deputy minister has been allocated to a district to champion the implementation of COVID prevention and management strategies and to support programs to end gender-based violence. Chairperson, as part of this, each municipality is called on to develop and support community capacity to deliver gender-based violence prevention interventions. This should be implemented through training community-level activists, as well as volunteers and GBV service organizations to roll out prevention programs. The district champions are working to integrate GBF prevention into more comprehensive violence and crime prevention strategies. These are also linked to alcohol and drug abuse interventions. So there is a link,
Mr. President,
between the alcohol and drug abuse. So, Chairperson, yes, a lot is being done in this regard, and we should be grateful for much of the work that is underway. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Honorable Lucas, any follow-up question?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and thank you very much, Honorable President, for the comprehensive response. Although it is really a tragedy that women are experiencing the kind of violence and abuse that they are experiencing in South Africa and other designated groups also, I would like to convey the appreciation of many women that have participated in our process of the Women's Charter Review in districts and in provinces. They have expressed their gratitude, Mr. President, for your decisive leadership, particularly with regards to the speed at which we ensure that government tables the 3 gender bills to enforce legislation. Furthermore, the issue, Mr. President, is that many women still feel that more efforts must be employed to intervene consistently to ensure that we change the attitude of the police and the justice sector to the plight of gender-based violence victims or survivors. They are also requesting that we expedite forensic processes for victims of rape in particular. So, Mr. President, I want to ask just, is there a process of ensuring that gender-based violence hotspots have more support services such as forensic testing while facilitating, and that is the most important one, continuous engagement with our police force to show the necessary compassion and empathy towards victims of gender-based violence, particularly at our police stations, at our crime scenes of gender-based violence, as well as at the safe houses or the one-stop centers that the President is speaking about. Just that question, Honorable President. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable President.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. With regard to how we want to improve the hotspots, you're absolutely right that one of the better ways is to capacitate them and to make sure that They are also able to conduct forensic investigations, and also to say to the police that the police themselves should be well trained, and we have embarked on a massive training process for our police, that when they have to handle gender-based violence cases, they should be able to do it in a way where they show compassion, they show understanding, and they show full support to victims of gender-based violence. And this they will only be able to do if they are well trained. But we also want the training to extend beyond being able to do forensics. We should get people who are well trained in forensic investigations so that they are able to do forensics, so that when those who perpetrate violence against women and children should know that they will not escape the focus of the law through technicalities, and that once forensic investigations have happened, even in those hotspot areas, they will be able to be dealt with in terms of the law. I welcome your comments about the Women's Charter Review. It demonstrates our determination to ensure that the rights of women are respected. And we will carry on with all the work that we need to do to ensure that the dignity and the respect that should be given to our women is there, including when they face great challenges, when they have to be serviced or cared for in our shelters. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much. We will now move over to supplementary questions. The second supplementary question will come from Christian, Honorable Christian.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Mr. President, during your SONA address in February, while talking on gender-based violence, you said we should upgrade our culture of reporting crime when we see it being committed. This battle, Mr. President, can only succeed if it is taken on by the whole of society and if we build a formidable social compact of all formations. The lived reality on the ground is that when victims of gender-based violence go to police stations, they are more than often not assisted. SAPS members often refuse to open cases and tell them to go home and make peace. Where victims are too far from police stations, they are not assisted because stations are under-resourced and have insufficient vehicles to get out to what many officers consider to be a lesser crime. There are still incidences where rape kits are not available, and many stations do not have appropriate facilities where victims can be assisted with dignity and privacy. Mr. President, the first refuge of a victim should be their local police station. This should be their sanctuary. This is where your citizens need government to be accessible, to provide the service that taxpayers fund and that people need. It is still not happening. Gender-based violence undermines the health, dignity, security, and autonomy of its victims. Yet, in South Africa, it still remains shrouded in a culture of silence. Mr. President, time to talk is over. It is time to take serious action. Will you instruct Minister Tsele to issue a national instruction to ensure that all gender-based violence cases are opened on request of victims, and that every station be improved to ensure victims are treated with the respect that they deserve? And furthermore, will you undertake to ensure that each and every police station in South Africa is capacitated with a person who is appropriately trained in order to assist victims of gender-based violence with respect and dignity? Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I want to support what Honorable Christian has said, and the matters that she has put before us are precisely the matters that we continue to address. Indeed, we are saying that when people see a crime being committed, they should be prepared to report such. But more particularly when it comes to victims of gender-based violence. She complains that they are not assisted as much as we would like them to be. Yes, there are such isolated cases, but we are improving on an ongoing basis. We are now working very hard to make sure that every police station has a desk just dedicated to dealing with gender-based violence cases. We're also making sure that every police station has the kits that are necessary to deal with rape cases. We want to ensure that every station has well-trained people, police officers, who will be able to deal with these cases so that no police station should ever be able to turn any woman or any child away. Yes, we also want every police station to be the very first place of refuge for the women of our country and for the children of our country. Things have, however, improved from what they used to be, and we want to keep on improving on an ongoing basis. A number of police stations now have well-trained personnel who are able to, with empathy, deal with various cases that have to do with gender-based violence. Yes, continue directing Minister Kwele to make sure that the police stations are turned into good places of refuge. We will continue insisting that every police station should have the necessary kits and that every police station should indeed have personnel who are not going to turn people away. We have heard a number of stories where people are turned away, women are turned away, and we want to minimize this as much as possible and to bring it to an end so that women in our country are no longer turned away when they go to complain in our police stations. And I'd like to thank Honorable Christian for raising these matters because they are serious and we will continue improving as suggested. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much, President. The third supplementary question will come from Honorable M.O. Mukause. Honorable Mukause.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mr. President, we cannot talk about gender-based violence without taking into cognizance the effects and extent to which LGBTQIA+ community is affected and yet excluded, Mr. President, when mapping out policies and intervention related to gender-based violence. Considering, Mr. President, the incompetence and lack of sensitivity training of South African police service members when dealing with domestic violence cases of a heteronormative nature and based on the wheel change when dealing with transgender, intersex, gay, lesbians, and all other related complaints. Mr. President, can you today assure the LGBTQIA+ community of your commitment in making sure that all their complaints are going to be taken at all levels of police station and be attended to? Thank you.
Honorable President.
Yes, Honorable Chairperson, I'd like to say to Honorable Mukause that yes, indeed, the interests of the LGBTQIA+ community is very prominent, not only in my mind, but also in our mind as government. This is a vulnerable community that needs the support of government, and we have made it a point that in keeping with the precepts of our Constitution, we will protect their interests and their rights. And we will, yes, be able to assure them that when they do go to police stations, they should be given the respect and the dignity that they deserve as South African citizens. Their condition is such that support, respect, and recognition should be given and offered to them. In our various policies, we always go out of our way to ensure that we do highlight the needs and the situation of the LGBTQIA+ community. So that we are prepared to do, and I'm willing to continue extending that message to our South African Police Service personnel and insist that they should take care to treat this community with the respect that it deserves. But thank you very much for raising the matter. Thank you.
The fourth supplementary question will come from Honorable Mfaela.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable President, regarding the fact that police officers often have legal understanding of the provision of various legislation which result in some sexual offences not being filed properly and subsequently not resulting in a successful prosecution. I would like to know whether the government has any mechanism in place to improve efficiency in the SAPS. Thank you, Mr. President.
Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I'd like to say to Honorable Mfaela that yes, we continue to make efforts to upskill our personnel, to reskill them, and to make sure that their skill base keeps improving on an ongoing basis. The work-based learning discipline and culture is being inculcated in the public service and also particularly in the police service. As I said earlier, we are ensuring that every police station does have a police officer or officers who are well-schooled, well-trained, and well-skilled in the way in which these very sensitive crimes should be handled, particularly because these are crimes that have victims that are vulnerable and that need a deep understanding of how people should be cared for. Have victims as women and children, and these are the citizens that we need to show a great deal of compassion to. So the skilling of our officers has to be directed at making sure that they handle these matters with the sensitivity that is required. But more importantly, that as they investigate these matters, they should be focusing on how the perpetrators can be brought to book and can be punished for the crimes that they perpetrate against the women and the children of our country. So the focus then has to be compassion, but it also has to be a resolute determination to make sure that they do get convictions so that those who perpetrate these acts do not go scot-free, that they are dealt with effectively by the arm of the law. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
No, thank you very much, Mr. President. We will now move over and on to question number 2. And this question is asked by Honorable Labus Kachne and is directed to the President. Honorable President.
Chairperson, as you may be aware, I directed that the documentation, which included correspondence as well as a report or reports relating to the visit to Zimbabwe by Minister of Defense and military veterans, Ms. Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, be made public. This has been done. It is public for everyone to look at and to scrutinize. Thus, as I expressed publicly, I received a written request for travel from Minister Mapisa-Nqakula dated the 7th of September 2020. The minister requested permission to travel to Zimbabwe from the 8th to the 10th of September 2020 to conduct a bilateral meeting with her Zimbabwean counterpart. Now, this is the normal requests that comes my way because I have to give permission for ministers to leave the country. But as I was not in Gauteng at the time the minister submitted her travel request, I gave the minister verbal approval of the travel on the 8th of September and signed the relevant documentation upon my return to Gauteng. This often happens where ministers are able to get approval verbally. On the 10th of September, the presidency sent the minister written confirmation that the president had approved her travel. The minister traveled on a South African Air Force aircraft, which also conveyed senior leaders of the African National Congress. I have since issued the minister with a formal reprimand for conveying the ANC delegation to Zimbabwe on an aircraft of the South African Air Force. I took this action after considering the minister's initial report and a supplementary report that I had directed the minister to provide on the circumstances that led to the ANC delegation traveling on a South African Air Force plane. While the minister was on an official trip for which I had given permission and for which she was entitled to use an Air Force aircraft, I found that it was an error in judgment on her part to use the plane to convey a party political delegation. I directed the minister to make sure that the ANC reimburses the state for the costs of the flight to Harare, and I understand that this has now been done. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Honorable Labuskachne, any follow-up?
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you for the answer, Mr. President. There have been rumors that you plan to fire the Minister of Defense. It seems rather ironic considering the inconsistent facts that have come out of this quagmire that possibly implicate you as well. According to the Minister's report that you referred to, the public one, not the supplementary one, to you regarding the diplomatic trip, you approved the said trip on the 10th of September. As you said now, it was written on the 10th. But that was a full day after the delegation returned. This would surely mean the minister acted in contravention of the ministerial handbook, which requires approval 2 weeks in advance. However, on the 1st October, your office released a statement saying you gave the verbal approval for the trip on the 8th. That was exactly the day when the minister and her delegation left. This shows that both you and the minister contravened the ministerial handbook because the handbook says 2 weeks in advance. And if that is a practice, it is a big problem. It is your responsibility and your legal duty to properly apply your mind to all legal requirements before approval. It is also very suspicious that after the delegation returned and only after public outrage, you chose to give written approval for the trip. This clearly indicates you attempted to cover your tracks from any wrongdoing, but the facts are clear, Mr. President. The truth is, you did not give verbal approval. That was a last-minute attempt at a cover-up by your office to provide you with some distance from this matter. And Minister, you also didn't give me what were the grounds for the approval of this trip and for the people in it. Although you said you found it that it's wrong, but what were the grounds? Mr. President, why did you lie to the South African public?
Should I proceed, Honorable?
Honorable President.
I'm raising on a point of order, Honorable Chairperson.
Yes.
It is incorrect for the honorable member to make an assertion that the president lied to the nation when the president has just for record presented a matter and the course of events that has unfolded regarding the trip in question. It is incorrect, it's unparliamentary. Thanks.
Honorable Labuskachne. Honorable Labuskachne,
yes,
I'm sure you'll understand as I make the comment that the whole question of using words that are not appropriate, such as lying and so on, has been raised a number of times in the House. Can you please ensure that you use an appropriate word?
Yes, Chair, I withdraw the word lie. I would ask the President, why are you not giving us all the facts on this, on the things that I've raised, and ask him why is the President saying that he approved this afterwards, while the ministerial handbook clearly states approval has to be 2 weeks in advance, and why can't he give us the information on that and the grounds as well? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I'd like to say that the grounds for the trip was that the minister was going to have a bilateral with her counterpart in Zimbabwe. And allow me, Honorable Chairperson, maybe not to go into too much detail. This meeting was going to take place in the wake of an earlier meeting that had taken place of the organ of SADC, which had to deal with a number of security matters that affect a number of countries in our region, and also have to deal with a very tricky and delicate situation in one of our member states. And they, as ministers of defense, have been involved in discussions on how best some of these very difficult, tricky security matters can be dealt with. And that required a fairly urgent meeting to be held, which then takes me to what is set out in the ministerial handbook. It is true that we have a notice period, say, of 2 weeks, but it has often happened where matters happen on an exigency basis, on an urgent basis, where ministers have to meet either their counterparts or travel outside the country. There are some trips that are well planned in advance, but some that have to be embarked upon at short notice. Short notice to deal with real urgent matters. And let me say that all members of cabinet do not leave the Republic of South Africa without seeking permission from the president. So the president has to sign off on every minister's ex-South African trip. And that's precisely what happened. And I did say in my initial answer that I was not in Gauteng when the permission was sought. The minister explained to me the reason for the trip, which I was quite aware of, and I gave permission, and later penned the permission down as required by our processes. So that is precisely what happened. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The second supplementary question comes from Honorable Dango.
Mr. President, the majority of members in this House endorses and applauds the timely corrective measures implemented by yourself regarding the flight to Zimbabwe. My question, Mr. President, is to the timing of urgent action required to resolve conflicts in the SADC region, including Zimbabwe, through SA's foreign policy of facilitating just and equitable peace through negotiation, as opposed to gunboat diplomacy. Further, in my limited experience of witnessing attempts to silence the guns, second-track diplomacy at times is more successful than regular diplomatic channels. Again, the question of urgency arises to urge the AU organ seized with the matter to engage in African challenges, African solutions to African problems. Further saying, Mr. President, I have had the occasion outside the country of having to leave wherever I was in 2 hours, never mind 24. Thank you very much.
Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Honorable President.
Well, thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. I could not agree more with what Ambassador Dango has said. The type of diplomacy that we have to get involved in requires quite a lot of dexterity. It requires flexibility as well, all within the confines of our rules and processes and the law. We are living in a period where the security of many countries is challenged, and where we need to ensure that we make every effort to not only silence the guns, but to prevent the guns from erupting. And as one does that, we need to embark on, yes, second-track diplomacy. We need to embark on diplomatic efforts of a positive nature where we will prevent conflict erupting and where we will be seeking to engage in talks and collaboration with a variety of countries in our region. And this should be seen as having been part of that. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll move over to the third supplementary question from Honorable A.B. Klute. Honorable Klute.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think we should, Mr. President, we shouldn't confuse the issues at hand. The one is the diplomatic travel. That's the one issue, but there's another issue that's being missed, and that it's at the time the lockdown regulations imposed in terms of the National Disaster Management stipulated very clearly that all international travel is prohibited, except in exceptional cases and only if approval was obtained beforehand. Now, the Minister Minister Zulu also stated that the ANC's team had been mandated by the National Executive Committee to go and hinted that due to the COVID-19 lockdown, it had no other means to go to Harare. Now, considering that the diplomatic visit was in fact also an ANC trip, since the ANC already acknowledged this and basically paid back the money, Mr. President, are you of view that the regulations were contravened? And if so, what actions will be taken against those individuals who were in contraventions of those regulations?
Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Klute. As you may well know, there are a few processes that are underway. The Public Protector has also embarked on an inquiry process that is underway. And with regard to the executive action that I took to allow the minister to visit, we also need to look at exactly how the Disaster Act regulations were contravened, and this would also impact on Home Affairs and all that. So all that is still in process, Honorable Klute, and I am confident that with all the proper answers that will be given, we will be able to see the light on this matter. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
The fourth supplementary question comes from Honorable Emma Mukause. Mukause.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Mr. President, the most spectacular thing to emerge out of this Zimbabwean trip is how you yourself, Mr. President, conveniently removed yourself from any responsibility for a trip which your members of the party you lead, mandated by yourself, undertook using state resources. But Mr. President, that is not our interest in this matter. The situation in Zimbabwe is deteriorating daily, and there's a complete disregard for the rule of law by authorities in Zimbabwe. What is the long-term situation to the problems of Zimbabwe, Mr. President? And what actions are you taking to ensure that there's a rule of law in that country and to make sure that Mnangagwa and his people accept democratic outcomes in future? Thank you.
Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Mukause. The Republic of Zimbabwe is a sovereign state. Much as it is a sovereign state, it is also a country that has sister countries in the region, united under SADC. And the developments in Zimbabwe, therefore, are of interest, not only to Zimbabwe, but also to other countries in the region. And we, in ensuring that we live as good neighbors with Zimbabwe, and indeed it with other countries, have been paying interest in what is unfolding in Zimbabwe. And to this end, I appointed envoys led by former Minister Sidney Mufamadi. And they went to Zimbabwe and had a discussion and a dialogue process with the leadership of Zimbabwe, including President Mnangagwa. And they returned and reported back to me. And the governing party, at a party-to-party level, felt that it also needed to engage with ZANU-PF in Zimbabwe. And all this is a clear demonstration of South Africa's interest in what is happening in Zimbabwe, whilst acknowledging recognizing that Zimbabwe is a sovereign state. It is a state which is a sister country to ours in the region, and we have deep dealings with Zimbabwe at a number of levels. And when there are issues between us, we need to sit down and discuss those. And we continue to be in dialogue with Zimbabwe at a number of levels: economically, socially, matters of transport, matters of immigration, and also in the end, yes, human rights. So all these matters are discussed. We have exchanges and discussions. And as we speak now, there are going to be further discussions and deliberations between ourselves, yes, and our colleagues and comrades in Zimbabwe. This matter requires our attention on both sides, as we are neighbors, and we have to continue being good neighbors in the interest of the people of both Zimbabwe and South Africa. This we never forget. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We'll now move on to question number 3, which is a question on COVID-19 corruption and or procurement irregularities. This question is asked by Honorable Gillian and is directed to the President. Honorable President.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. The government responded swiftly and decisively to allegations of corruption in the award of COVID-related contracts. The measures it has taken include the establishment of a fusion center which brings together 9 law enforcement agencies with a view to sharing information and resources and ensuring that there is a coordinated response to dealing with acts of criminality. On the 23rd of July 2020, I issued a proclamation to the Special Investigating Unit to investigate COVID-related maladministration and unlawful conduct in any state institution during the national state of disaster. The SIU is currently looking into 932 matters under the issued proclamation, and all these matters are at different stages of investigation. The SIU has to date provided me with 2 interim reports which outline the progress that they have made in the investigations, including where investigations have been finalized. The reports of the SIU investigations will be made public once all the necessary processes have been completed and there is no risk of jeopardizing ongoing investigations. On the 5th of August 2020, Cabinet set up a ministerial team to compile and publish details of all COVID-related contracts awarded by the state. These have now been published on the Treasury website and will be updated on a monthly basis. SARS has established a COVID-19 project team to investigate and audit cases as well. Some of its reportable outcome highlight that as at the end of September, there were 307 cases with an estimated tax revenue loss of 300 million. There are 139 companies referred to for potential tax evasion investigation. The rise in serious commercial crimes and incidents of COVID-19 procurement corruption have meant that we are fast-tracking the establishment of additional commercial crime courts and also increasing the capacity of existing ones. We are, Chairperson, looking to establish additional special commercial crimes in Polokwane, Mbombela, Mahikeng, Mthatha, and Mangaung. And the NPA is also doing quite a lot of work in this regard. So, Chairperson, a lot of work is happening with a view of ensuring that we do handle these COVID-related cases. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first supplementary question will come from Honorable Gillian. Honorable Gillian.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. And thank you, Honorable President, for the elaborate answer to the question. Today is also a day where we celebrate the born day of OR Tambo Chair. And in the spirit of OR, I want to also tell you, Mr. President, that yes, there has been some corruption in the PPE procurement process. And yes, it must be investigated. And those found guilty must be punished. And also, Mr. President, my next question is, how successful was the overall procurement of PPEs? And what role did the procurement of PPEs play in the fight against COVID-19? Thank you, Mr. President.
Honorable President.
Honorable Chairperson, the procurement of PPE diagnostic as well as therapeutic material was quite decisive in helping us to fight the pandemic. I think we have been blinded by the corruption that has ensued, which we regret. But at the same time, we must say that the provision of PPEs in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic has been quite effective. So effective that we've been able to ensure that South Africans become used to the culture of using PPEs, using masks, and also those who work in the health sector to be well protected. But what it has also spawned is a manufacturing base for us, manufacturing of masks and a number of other preventative items, up and including things like ventilators. So whilst there's been corruption, we can look at the positive aspect of having deployed PPEs. And when we look at the money that we've had to deploy, which runs into a few billions, and what in the end has been abused, we will find that, yes, whilst we must deplore those who have sought to corrupt this wonderful process, the process of providing PPEs to our people has been actually quite a good one. But because we are living with this virus and have to live with it for a lot longer than we might have anticipated, PPEs will continue to have to be provided. And I think the actions we are taking in dealing with corruption are going to stand us in good stead to prevent further corruption as we continue to rely on PPEs to curb the spread of the infection. Masks are here to stay and for a very long time. And for health workers, gloves and all the sheets that they have to use are here to stay. And we must now make sure that all the procurement processes going forward for PPEs are done properly, are done without any form of corruption. So that would be the benefit that we will have achieved out of all this, much as we regret the corruption that ensued. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The second supplementary question comes from Honorable F. Detroit.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Mr. President, initially you indicated that corruption will not be tolerated during the pandemic. You were so serious about this that you met with the Auditor General, where it was decided that a real-time audit would be conducted, and nearly 5 months went by since you announced that steps would be taken against those individuals who were acting irregularly. My question is, were you made aware of possible corruption in real time during this time? And did you act immediately against those individuals? Thank you, Chair.
Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I must say that it was my honest wish and hope that there wouldn't be any form of corruption with the procurement of PPEs. And it was to this end that I had a discussion with the Auditor General, where, as we discussed the matter, the Auditor General said, we will be able to do audits as this process unfolds, and we should be able to get an indication of how it is unfolding. But as it turned out, those who wanted to defraud the system did so almost right at the beginning. And we were procuring these PPEs right across the country. The process had become so decentralized, and Treasury had also given the permission that, because it was a very urgent procurement process that we are dealing with, had allowed some leeway that yes, the procurement should happen, because we were in a war situation. And being in a war situation required that you should relax certain of your processes and regulations. And it was through this that we opened the chances and the opportunities for those who had criminal intent to see the gap and do all that they needed to do. As you may well have seen, many of those were not even on the procurement lists that, or the customer lists that either National Treasury and a number of other departments have. So it opened up the gap, and we've learned a lesson. We really have learned a lesson. Was I aware at a very early stage? The answer is no. I only became aware later, and as you may recall, I did address the nation in this regard, deploring and decrying the fact that many of our compatriots had seen an opportunity of defrauding the system. And let me immediately say, without even trying to be defensive, a number of countries around the world have gone through exactly the same experience that we have been through. In a number of countries, there was corruption in the system where people of criminal intent saw opportunity. Some of them were as highly placed as ministers in a number of countries. And what I am grateful for is that we were able to notice it and to deal with it. And now it has also led to a very positive spin-off of getting 9 criminal fighting agencies to work together. And in my view, the working together is going to transcend and go way beyond just the COVID moment. It is now going to look at fighting corruption throughout. This COVID corruption that we've been through has also revealed what I may say a bit of a silver lining, because corruption reared its head in the ugliest of ways. And all of us as South Africans demonstrated our abhorrence on corruption. And we have, as a collective people, have said that we are not prepared to tolerate this. And we want to see the back of corruption. And many organizations, from church organizations, sporting, social organizations, clubbed together against corruption, because the stench of corruption is what concerned many of our people. And I think we are now, and I do believe firmly that we are now on a different path with regard to fighting corruption. It has emboldened us. It has given us strength. We must, yes, decry the fact that we had to go through this, but maybe it was a cathartic moment we had to go through to have our resolve reinforced in fighting corruption. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable President. The third question comes from Honorable S. Zandamela. Honorable Zandamela.
No, thanks, Chairperson. President, the government has a history of setting up many commissions and task teams to investigate issues of corruption. We see the same cycle being repeated here with the COVID-19 corruption and procurement irregularities, where government officials are at the center of allegations again. Now, President, how much money will this investigation cost South African taxpayers? Where will the funds come from? And lastly, President, how do you plan to ensure that these investigations will result in convictions and justice being served to the South African people? Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable Zandamela. Fortunately, with these investigations, we are not having to set up a commission. We are utilizing existing institutions. 9 of them are united in investigating all this. These are institutions that exist, and all we have done is to strengthen their resolve, get them to work on a specific issue and see how well they are going to work. And through that, we build a foundation for future collaboration and working together. Prior to this, they didn't even really work together or share information, and now they do. They already have personnel in each of all these institutions. Yes, we do have to strengthen them, some of them here and there, by bringing in people because they've either been understaffed or underfunded. So that will happen in the normal course. And in the normal processes of doing their work, they will be able to investigate all as they already are. They've already identified the number of cases, and working together they've done so. So the costs are going to be much more reduced than they ordinarily would have been if we had set up a commission of inquiry. And I had said that I did not want to have to set up a commission of inquiry, and the way they are collaborating has helped us not to set up an inquiry, a commission of inquiry, because they are working so well together. And will we be able to get convictions out of this? That's precisely what they are doing. They are identifying investigating every contract that has been entered into between the state and third parties. So everyone is being looked into very closely with a tooth comb, and that in itself is a very good and positive sign. Where there is wrongdoing, where there's been malfeasance, yes, that will be identified, that will be processed through the prosecuting system, and those who are found to have violated particular rules, laws, and processes will have to face the music, unfortunately, because there has to be accountability. So we leave that to the courts, and all they ever do is just to give me a progress report. They do the rest because they are independent, and we have said to them They must do all this without any fear or favor or any form of prejudice. And Honorable Chair, I am very pleased that they have stuck to that. They have not even for a moment asked the president to interfere, nor would I want to interfere, because they must take the decisions and they are the protectors of our nation's adherence to the rule of law. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. The fourth and last supplementary question comes from Honorable T.J. Protester. Tim.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Mr. President. Mr. President, the Auditor General report on COVID-19 corruption requested by yourself and published on the 2nd of September 2020 has revealed serious malfeasance in the Departments of Health, Social Development, Labour and Unemployment, Agriculture, and Arts and Culture. You preside, Mr. President, over the appointment of the Directors General of these departments. When will you take decisive steps to suspend each one of these accounting officers, pending the resolution of investigations into their professionally negligent and or criminally negligent behavior? And Mr. President, while we have you here today, there have been many rumors floating around, and they've been supported by some of your premiers and some of your cabinet ministers, saying that the country is going back to level 3 or level 5 lockdown measures in the very near future. Are you prepared to put those to bed today? There are many South Africans very anxious about this. Can you put it to bed today so people can move forward with their preparations and their business activities and get rid of this nonsense once and for all? Thank you, Mr. President.
Can I just warn members to please avoid asking new questions? I know.
Yes, Chairperson. I'm sure the President will help us.
But let's not do that.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Let's proceed. Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, for seeking to save me there. Let me say that, yes, unfortunately, there have been reports of malfeasance, which are most disturbing. Malfeasance that has been found in a number of departments in government. That was one of the reasons why we empowered the Special Investigating Unit to investigate, working together with all other criminal justice entities to investigate all these contracts and the PPE procurement process. Now that is underway, and we are going to get reports on who did what, how they did it, where they did it, and what it cost. So I would like to invite all of us to wait for the moment when that report will come through, so that we are then able to deal with all these matters holistically. And let's not put the cart in front of the horse at this point in time. With regard to these rumors that are going around, with regard to whether we are going to go to level 1 and level 5 or level 3, I'd like to say that we are continuing to actively analyze, manage the situation with the assistance of the medical advisory group, where they are analyzing the incidence of infections as they are unfolding throughout the country. We are, I must say, beginning to see some signs that are of concern to us. As South Africans, we are not all adhering to the protective measures, such as wearing our masks, such as washing our hands. We've been reading about reports of how groups of people have gone to various manifestations. It could be meetings, it could be parties, where infections have been reported and where people, having gathered together, have become like super spreaders, where the spreading of the infection has then ensued. That is worrying, and we must continue to say that as South Africans, we need to make sure that we heed the adherence to the measures that have been put to us by the Medical Advisory Committee. And if we can do that, and even Minister of Health, yes, who contracted COVID with his wife, is insisting in saying COVID-19 is serious. It is a serious condition, and we all need to adhere to those measures, particularly now, as a nation we move towards that fun period of December, where people will let their guard down. And that is what is of concern, and we are watching that. And I received a report today. I want to look at the report very closely and also then have an opportunity in the coming days, possibly next week, of being able to address the people of South Africa about what we now need to do in the light of what we are going through. I don't want to be alarmist. I don't want our people to be alarmed with rumors such as we're going to level 3. That is simply not true. And I want to assure everyone that that is not true. If it ever gets there, I will be the one to advise the nation where we are and where we are going to. For now, all we need to do is to adhere to our preventative measures. Wear your mask. I was at a function today unveiling the statue of our revered leader, Oliver Reginald Tambo, at OR Tambo Airport. I was pleasantly pleased, Honorable Chairperson, that everyone who was at that function wore a mask. Everyone, without exception, everyone wore a mask. And if all of us as South Africans were to do precisely that, wear a mask every time we are in public, that will go a long, long way in limiting the number of infections. So, but we will talk about that in the coming week. But at the moment, Honorable Member, we are observing the situation. So there's no need to be alarmed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the next question, which is question 4 on sustainability of municipalities. This question is being raised and tabled by A.B. Klute and is directed to the President. Honorable President.
Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, there are many municipalities that have been experiencing severe difficulties in achieving financial sustainability, but also difficulties in providing services to their residents. This is mainly due to poor governance and leadership failures. Also, weakening oversight and accountability, as well as poor coordination among different spheres of the state. For many municipalities, there is a broader problem of limited revenue base, where there is insufficient economic activity to meet the needs of our residents. And this is possibly the #1 problem that many of our municipalities are having. The Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs and National Treasury are working on a strategy to jointly support dysfunctional municipalities in a coherent as well as a coordinated manner. Now, COCTA will perform an overall coordination role through the Back to Basics program and take the lead on all governance and service delivery matters. National Treasury itself, together with the provincial treasuries in our provinces, will take the lead on financial management responsibilities. The purpose of the Municipal Systems Improvement Grant is to assist municipalities to perform their functions and to stabilize institutional and governance systems. In this financial year alone, the grant aims to support municipalities through the implementation of the Integrated Urban Development Framework and in the improvement of their data management records, as well as their infrastructure at the IT level. It also aims to support and monitor municipalities in the implementation of the district development model, particularly in the rolling out of staffing regulations and competency frameworks. In the past, various support programs and capacity building grants have been introduced, and these have been aimed at improving capacity in performance of the local government sphere. Due to the uncoordinated and fragmented nature of local government, we have found that it is necessary that we should proceed with these programs, and many of them have yielded some outcomes, but not all the desired outcomes that we wish for. The repurposing of the Municipal Systems Improvement Grant will be aligned to the district development model. Now, this approach in itself ensures that the district municipalities and their local municipalities will receive evidence-based support programs on an ongoing basis. Honorable Chairperson, in conclusion, I wish to commend the various provincial delegations to the NCOP for the visits that they are undertaking as part of the Provincial Oversight Week to respective provinces under the theme ensuring capable and financially sound municipalities. These visits demonstrate the importance that this House, the NCOP, places on the effective functioning of municipalities in our country, particularly because municipalities are the front line of service provision and local development. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The first supplementary question comes from Honorable Klute. Honorable Klute.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Mr. President. I wish I could have asked you to come and visit Machabeng, or could have visited Machabeng the past week in the Free State, where residents for nearly a week didn't have water. But you are Mr. President, and they do have a mayor, and we are working with that in the Free State. But Mr. President, it's apparent that municipalities are not staffed adequately. These officials are either not willing or not able, or both. In the meantime, the government has embarked on a program that's not sustainable. South Africans can simply not afford to pay nearly R1 billion every year for consultants, whilst municipalities should be able to be self-reliant. Mr. President, in the meantime, unions are holding not only government, but ultimately residents ransom with poor performances and poor performance management results. The very same officials who should be held accountable are not, and they are allowed, enabled, and permitted to keep the status quo, whilst consultants are appointed to do the very same jobs they should have done in the first place. And we've seen the AG's reports, Mr. President. Ultimately, municipalities show no improvement of finances and service delivery. We are paying double, Mr. President, for no improvement, and the AG said this in his recent report. So what's the plan, Mr. President? Should municipalities, whose salaries by average amount to 60% of their budgets, continue to allow municipal officials to be unable or unwilling or both, and let consultants do their work? Or should your party's catered appointment policy be reconsidered and capable and willing people be appointed in municipalities? Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Mr. President.
Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Klute. The story that you are relating, I am familiar with it. And it is precisely this story that we are making all efforts to put right. We know that a number of officials who are either occupying key positions may not be well qualified to be in those positions. And those, as you say, who are unwilling or incapable of performing those tasks needs to be dealt with, because it's quite clear if they can't do the work or if they are not willing to do the work, they don't belong where they are right now. When we say we want to go back to basics, it basically means it's not only how the work should be done, it is also about the people who will do the work in a dedicated manner, completely committed to serving the people of South Africa, where we will have capable people, people with the know-how, the skills, and that is why we're putting so much emphasis on training, on making sure that people are well skilled and they are well capable in doing their work. We want to turn this ship around. We want our municipalities to provide high quality services to our people. And they're able to do so if we've got the right people in the right jobs, performing absolutely high-end tasks and services to our people. We will be able to move forward effectively with our Back to Basics program by adhering to modern methods of delivering service to our people, making sure those who provide those services are well skilled. Where skills are weak and short, we need to train those people, empower them with good skills. And when we do so, that will also lift their morale, and their level of productivity will also go up. So we've got to use a combination of approaches to make sure in the end that good services are delivered to our people. This we are committed to doing, and the Back to Basics program is going to encompass all this so that in the end, our municipalities are better positioned than what they are. There are, however, some really outstanding municipalities, one must say. Municipalities that produce really good results, both financially and operationally, who are also able to collect revenue from residents and are able to give a good service to our people. We must applaud those. We must support those that have shown weaknesses, and we must correct those municipalities where there's been total dysfunctionality. And I'm sure that we should be able to turn the corner in no time as we move forward. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable President. We'll move on to the second supplementary question from Honorable Ryder. I know that he's been having some problems connecting. But Honorable Ryder, are you there?
I'm here, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, there are a number of municipalities that are failing right now. Now, your district model that you've told us is going to be the solution is going to take a substantial amount of time to implement. The skills are just not in place to make it work, and the pilot projects are already showing problems because one size simply doesn't fit all. So if we look at the Mfuleni municipality, it's collapsing with sewer and electricity issues that are not being resolved. The Free State has got not one functioning municipality in the eyes of the Auditor General and of Ratings Africa. Nelson Mandela Bay losing more than 46% of its expensive treated potable water through a leaky system during a water crisis. 4 municipalities in the Northern Cape had their power supply from Eskom cut 2 weeks ago. And the Mpofana municipality in KwaZulu-Natal is also sitting with the same problem. Emarageni and Govan Mbeki municipalities in Mpumalanga owe Eskom 6.3 billion rand. And Mokgalakwena local municipality in Limpopo sits with 1.13 billion in unauthorized, irregular, and wasteful expenditure. The entire Northwest province had to be placed under administration in 2018 because not even the then provincial government was able to support local government. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, Mr. President. The only standout here, and you alluded to it, it's the Western Cape, where things seem to be working satisfactorily, if not always perfectly.
When is the question coming?
We need an answer now. What is your plan to give South Africans the basic services that they are paying for, that they were promised by your government, and that they deserved now, Mr. President?
Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable Ryder. The problems and the challenges that you have articulated are well known to us as South Africans. We know the challenges, the pain and the anguish that many of our people who live in some of those municipalities are going through. And the municipal sector is generally facing enormous challenges in our country. And it is for that reason that we felt we needed to come up with a supportive measure or structure for municipalities through the district development model. The district development model, which will be set out or established in 48 municipalities, including 8 metros, bringing it to 52, is going to be much better in helping us to address the challenges that our municipalities are going through. And we will be able, much as you're absolutely right, one size does not fit all, but we will be able to have generic issues that needs to be addressed throughout the country. And with that, we'll be able to have a good template that enables us to deal with the issues. One of those is going to speak to the economic plans, but more importantly, a plan that is going to cascade from the bottom right to the province and to national. A good example is the National Recovery Plan that we announced. I'm pleased to say that our districts are looking at it very closely to see how best it can apply to them. Our infrastructure plan is also focused on various provinces, but at the district level as well. That's where implementation is going to be. So we are going to be addressing the governance issues as well as the financial issues as we deal with the development process for many of these municipalities. We now have a system. We now have a template that we can use to improve the municipalities of our country. And I have no doubt that that is going to give more focus to our municipalities, because implementing our recovery plan through infrastructure, through better governance, is going to ensure that, yes, those municipalities become more focused, but it will also help to incentivize the people who work in those municipalities. So we are looking forward to a virtuous circle emerging in all our municipalities. And yes, some things will take time, but I have no doubt that we have embarked on a wonderful system that is going to ensure that government works in an integrated way, both at a national, provincial, and local government level, not in a desperate way, in a divided way. It is going to be a joined up government focusing on the implementation of one plan, one district, one municipality, and one national department and one government. So we are on the path. Having realized what our weaknesses are, our challenges are, we are on the path to ensure that we do put things right. And we will, Honorable Ryder. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The third supplementary question comes from Honorable S.E. Mfaela. Honorable Mfaela.
Honorable Chairperson Nyambosa, Honorable President, in view of the 6.5 billion municipal irregular expenditure in KwaZulu-Natal, does the government have any mechanism in place to tackle non-compliance to legislation, policies, and procedure that govern good administration in KZN municipalities? I thank you, Chair.
Honorable President.
Yes, Honorable Chairperson, we have said that we do want accountability. Accountability is one of the most important elements of our governance process. We want those who have not been playing according to the rules, who have not been complying, yes, to be accountable, and if need be, to face the might of the law, because losing 6.5 billion is quite a huge amount of money that robs our people of development and service delivery. So yes, we want compliance and compliance and compliance, and those who do not comply, they must know that we will not tolerate that. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable President. We'll move over to the fourth and the last supplementary question from TSC Dodovu. Honorable China.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and thank you very much, Mr. President, for your pointed and always honest responses. Mr. President, the overwhelming majority of our people indeed appreciate how you lead them, especially during difficult moments like during this corona pandemic, like during how you tackle the economic crisis facing us, and like how you tackle the scourge of violence against women as well as corruption. And they indeed appreciate what you are doing. And your leadership reminds them how President Oliver Tambo, who we are celebrating his birthday today, provided leadership to them in prosecuting the struggle for national liberation. Now, indeed, we agree with you, Honorable President, that there is a need for municipal turnaround, that we need to turn around the situation in our municipalities. And my question is, in view of this, are you, as the head of state, confident and satisfied that the measures that your government has put in place, like the district development plan, like the municipal finance improvement grant, like the skill revolution that is needed at the municipal level, will ensure that our municipalities become capable and financially viable? Are you confident and satisfied that these measures will help us to improve that situation? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable President.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Dodovu. I am confident that we will be able to turn things around. I'd like to believe that we can't get much worse than where we are now. Everybody agrees that many of our municipalities are dysfunctional for a variety of reasons that I set up. And one of those is unfortunately that many of them do not have a viable tax base. Because when you don't have a source of revenue that is viable, and you have to rely on the central fiscus, it becomes a problem. However, having said that, we've now established various mechanisms. The first was the back to basics one, and we've also come with the district development model. But the overarching one is how we want to get on to strengthen the state. And I have said that the top priority that we should have is that we should strengthen the capacity of the state. When we first announced or delivered the State of the Nation, we started with the economy and all that and ended up with the state at the bottom. And I felt that we now need to focus more on improving the capacity of the state. Because when we are able to improve the capacity of the state at all levels, local, provincial, and national level, we are then able to address some of the challenges that we face. It is more and more of an efficient state, committed state that is developmental, that is ethical, that we will be able to have better outcomes, and we are determined to get to that level. So I am confident that we will indeed be able to accede to higher levels of governance, much as it may be difficult at a number of levels, but we will get there. That is the plan, that is the mission, that is the determination. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We will then move on to the next question, which is question 5, on investigations into COVID-19 fund wrongdoings. This question is being put forward by Honorable T.J. Protestant and is directed to the President. Honorable President.
Honorable Chairperson, the Special Investigating Unit has made progress, as I was saying earlier, in their investigation since the promulgation was issued on the 23rd of July 2020. The SIU is currently investigating 1,274 contracts from 85 departments, provinces, municipalities, and public entities. That's the combined cohort of entities where investigations are happening. To date, it has referred 34 criminal matters to the NPA and 33 disciplinary referrals to the state institutions. The SCU has instituted cases in the Special Tribunal for Cancellation of Contracts to the value of 223 million rand and the recovery of funds. The investigations are ongoing, as I said. As I indicated earlier, the reports of the SIU will be made public once all the necessary processes have been completed and there is no risk of jeopardizing ongoing investigations. I wish to commend the SIU for the really outstanding work that they have been doing under very difficult circumstances and conditions to have these investigations completed urgently and diligently. And they have assured me that they are pulling out all stops and they are laying out their very best personnel to investigate all these areas. They know what is at stake. It is the national standing of our country. It is the ethos of our country. That is what is at stake. And they are now working around the clock to make sure that they investigate these so that we can be redeemed as a nation that ensures that there is accountability, there is follow through if one transgresses the provisions and regulations of our laws. So I wish them luck. I wish them strength as they continue to do their work. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's move on then to the first supplementary question by Tim Proteseth. Tim.
Thank you, Chairperson. There'll be no surprises on this one. Mr. Chairperson, Mr. President, thank you for your reply. And Mr. President, I'm sure that many South Africans will be encouraged by your reply. However, Mr. President, it is also true that many South Africans are suffering from promise fatigue and want to see real results, which your office is responsible for. Mr. President, we touched on it earlier in a previous question, but the ground was laid for this entire situation, Mr. President, by the disastrous Treasury Note 8. That directive from Treasury suspended the conditions of the PFMA and literally flung open the barn door for the corruption hyenas to move in and eat at will. This happened on your watch, Mr. President. Can you take South Africa into your confidence and acknowledge that that mistake was made? Can you advise South Africans how you will immediately move to get rid of Treasury Note 8 and make sure that all procurement of PPEs happens according to the correct PFMA regulations? And will you please acknowledge the massive mistake and the lack of foresight made by your government for the corruption that happened and the consequences thereof? Thank you, Mr. President.
Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I did say earlier that, this issue of the procurement of PPEs happened in the wake of the worst health disaster that our country has ever faced since 1918. In 1918, our population was much smaller than what it is now. And as this disaster of COVID-19 descended on us, and as we locked down the country, as we embarked on the biggest health response we have ever seen in the history of this country, it became necessary that we should characterize this, what we were going through, as an absolute emergency situation. In an emergency, and let me digress for a moment, in Cabinet we debated long and hard, and this also included debates in various political parties, whether we needed to utilize the emergency laws as allowed in our constitution, or whether we should go with disaster management. We went with Disaster Act, but Disaster Act also means that you're facing an emergency situation, which then allows you to put in suspense a number of other processes. And it is this that inspired Treasury to say, as we are dealing with this disaster, we do need to act quickly. We do need to procure PPEs for health workers, because we couldn't expose our health workers to infections. And unfortunately, a number of them have since contracted the disease and have died. But we also knew that the nation needed protection, and protection could only be found by procuring these PPEs, and we could only procure them quickly, fast enough, yes, through the Treasury suspending the regulations for PFMA, which is possible and is done in terms of that provision. And yes, in the end it did. The question will always be, with hindsight, did we act correctly to do so? It is exactly the same as having to consider with hindsight whether we did the right thing to do a lockdown or whether we didn't do the right thing. And in the end, it's not so much that it's a value judgment. It's the fact that it was a decision that had to be taken, and it was a leadership decision. If anybody has to be blamed, I should be blamed, because as President of the Republic, I had to say, this is where we should go, because we were facing a very dangerous situation. And I characterized it akin to a war situation, because we faced a very dangerous situation where many of our people could die. And yes, decisions had to be taken. And with those decisions, obviously comes risks. And of course, one of the risks was precisely what I was talking about earlier, that there would be people who would see gaps, people with evil and criminal intent then saw the gaps. But let me say to you, we are not the only country that has experienced what we have. Many other countries around the world also suspended their normal regulations and embarked on an emergency footing that enabled their treasuries or their procurement agencies or entities to procure therapeutics, diagnostics on a fast basis. And remember, we were also competing against a number of countries in the world. There was a time when, as we wanted to procure, we were told that, no, all, the PPEs that you ever wanted have all been bought by your more developed economic countries. They've bought everything. And so we were involved in a race against time, and we needed to act very quickly. And unfortunately, the risk was there are those who took advantage of us. And with hindsight now, we now know that we need to be better prepared for any pandemic that could come or any similar type of calamity. So in this regard, I must say that I think we acted as well as we could have. And now we are involved in following up those who were involved in malfeasance. And this, as I've said earlier, could be seen as the silver line, because it basically means that we have drawn a line in the sand against corruption as a nation, that we will no longer allow people to be involved in corruption now and into the future. So to me, it was necessary to act as we did. We've learned lessons, and we are going to make sure that this does not happen ever again. That is corruption. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much. The second supplementary question comes from S.M. Faela.
Honorable Chairperson, Mr. President, I want to know whether any progress has been made on the lifestyle audit and pre-audits for all procurement and action against those implicated, which the KZN Prima promised in August 2020. Thank you, Mr. President.
The issue, Honorable Chairperson, the issue of lifestyle audit is being finalized. I know I spoke about it some time ago. We then got a report which was just too bulky, too onerous to go through. And we've now been working on it with professionals to ensure that we have a simple, straightforward, but also a probing process that cannot be circumvented. And I felt that we needed to do it right from the word go. And even those who might want to get involved in some measure of malfeasance, we will be able to catch them out once we bed down the system. So the system is being completed now, and it is going to be introduced. We have delayed, we will own up to that, but it is in the process of being finalized. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much. The third supplementary question comes from Honorable DG Mahlangu. Mahlangu.
Angithokoze ohlele ngaphambili. Ngithathe lethuba ngokuzithoba okukhulu ngilochise kumongameli. Honorable President, as a prelude to my follow-up question, allow me to join millions of South Africans to congratulate your leadership during these trying times for restoring critical, comprehensive and capabilities in our criminal justice system. Our law enforcement institutions have, over the recent past, made strides in the reported investigations and arrests of corruption suspects. South Africans also appreciate the responsiveness of the COVID-19 governance model that has brought greater cohesion and integration among different spheres and different sector departments. My follow-up question, having said that, Honorable Chairperson, is to the Honorable President, is how will the government strengthen the innovative approach of the fusion centers and the real-time audits that have proven so effective in detecting and investigating corruption? What are the government plans to sustain the momentum? So my question is twofold. The other leg is, what is the plans to sustain the momentum of our criminal justice system of swift investigation and arrest of suspicions? Ngaphambi kokuthi ngihlale phansi ngehle ngebota ngihlale ngaphambili angisho ukuthi sithokozela ubuholi bakho sithembela kibo. Ngiyathokoza ngihlale ngaphambili.
Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Mama Hlangu, ngiyabonga ngithi locha nawe, ngiyabonga kakhulu. With regard to how we will sustain this positive process that we've embarked upon, I'd like to say that our colleagues who are involved in these 9 institutions feel so encouraged, so empowered, so emboldened, and they are committed to serve the people of South Africa through the work that they do. And we've given full recognition to their efforts. Let me say that they themselves started this and found that they needed to work together. We've just given it a seal of approval, and it's almost like a test drive. They're test driving it, it's working extremely well. And we see this being sustained into the future, because what it does do is to actually enhance joined up government, an integrated government process where government does not work in silos, where we work in an integrated manner, where there is a sharing of information, sharing of resources, sharing of processes, and through this we're then able to save money, but to achieve wonderful outcomes. And those outcomes that you were talking about are almost guaranteed because people are now working extremely well together. And it transcends personalities. It is about institutions finding a way of working together in a very structured and cooperative way. This is cooperative governance being played out in the most positive way. Will it be sustained? Yes, it will be sustained because it has proven to be most effective. It has proven to be a really fantastic method of fighting criminality, dealing with malfeasance in our country. And more than that, it is a process that is restoring the rule of law in our country, where institutions were weakened, they are now being strengthened. Where institutions were working alone in silos, they are now working together. And where institutions didn't have a clear vision, they now have a very clear vision ahead of them. And they are now serving the people of our country. And the other benefit of having all these institutions working together is that there's check and balance. They check each other and they balance each other. There's no single institution that will be compromised because they check each other and they work together and they work on projects collectively. So it will be sustained. It is a wonderful system that we can take forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. The fourth and the last supplementary question under this main question comes from Honorable S.A. Lutul.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mongameli, the recent arrests by the Hawks do not fool some of us. We need a criminal justice system that is able to investigate and successfully prosecute corrupt criminals in this country, regardless of who they are and what position they hold. We know for a fact that departmental officials perform these corrupt dealings at the instruction of politicians who are more often insulated from taking responsibilities. Mongameli, what sort of engagement have you had with both the Hawks and the NPA to get guarantees that the fight against corruption is given the necessary support and agency, and that those arrested will be prosecuted speedily, Mr. President? Thank you.
Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Lutuli. My engagements with our criminal justice entities obviously are through the Minister of Justice, because he works with them, through the Minister of Police, because he works with them. And to the extent that I do have any meetings and dealings with them, it's usually about resources. They often come running, say, we don't have enough resources, President. We are short of resources, we are short-staffed. Right at the beginning, when I became president, I made it clear that I will not want to get involved in their operational work. They must do their work without any fear, favor, or interference. Where they need resources, where they need their work to be strengthened, yes, we talk, just as we talk with any department. Could be the Department of Defense when they need to procure or when they need more money. It could be the Department of Health. It could be the department, various departments. So where they need their hand to be strengthened, where they need resources, we're able to meet and talk about that. And for the most part, we then say, you've got a law that regulates your activity, implement the law, work in terms of the legislation. You've got a very clear template. You do not need a president to tell you how you should execute your work. Go ahead and execute it. The support that you need in the form of either equipment, in the form of personnel, in the form of, just enabling your processes, yes, can come and lean on the president, who will then lean on the treasury. But then again, all these things are set out in budgets. So it becomes a lot easier. It is a very easy conversation because all I need to do is to encourage people to do their work and to say that you become loyal and you become faithful to the people of South Africa and not to an individual. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable President. We now move over to the last question, main question, and that's question number 6. And this question is about public transport infrastructure restoration. The first question initially was asked by M.I. Khai to the president, and because he is not available today, he has not been well recently, but he is not available. The question will then be in the name of Honorable Muima. Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members. The continuous damage, the sabotage, the theft, and the vandalism that we've been experiencing of our rail infrastructure is one of the worst forms of economic crime in our country. It has a direct impact and bearing on the lives of millions of South Africans who rely on commuter rail services to travel to work and to study. It undermines economic growth and places a further strain on public resources. As we mobilize resources for a substantial investment in commuter rail infrastructure as part of the announced Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, we are taking decisive measures to improve security on these various rail lines. The National Treasury has granted approval of 900 million rand for the implementation of the PRASA security plan to combat theft and vandalism of the rail infrastructure. Part of the plan is to immediately appoint security personnel to deploy remotely piloted aircraft systems to conduct virtual patrols of high-risk infrastructure. This capability will work together with specialized investigations and armed response. The plan will also involve the creation of an internal security capability for armed response, control room operations, as well as increasing the number of physical security officials on the ground. I must say that this has already commenced. An e-guarding solution will be introduced for the protection of mission-critical assets such as substations for electricity, relay rooms, and communication sites. With early warning security technology and defense security systems. The plan will also introduce specialized investigations with legal support and access to criminal laboratories. We believe that this capability will improve the quality of investigation reports, leading to an improved prosecution rate. As we substantially improve security measures on the commuter rail network, our most effective defense against such crimes is, in the end, the vigilance of rail users and their active involvement in the efforts to protect this very vital national resource. So we call on all South Africans to take a stand against these types of crimes and be part of the effort to build a public transport that is safe and reliable, as well as an affordable public transport system. This type of public transport will be in the service of our people to transport the millions of South Africans on a daily basis from home to work, students from home to study, and many others who travel from home to various places. And we want this to be done with safety and in comfort as well. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
No, thank you very much, Mr. President. And now for the first supplementary question, Honorable Muima.
Thank you, National Chair. And let me also take this opportunity to express my gratitude to the President in a detailed manner and comprehensive way in which he responded to the complex question around vandalism and theft of our rail commuter assets. Indeed, the leadership that the President is displaying is a clear illustration that he learned a lot from the epitome and the paradox of sense of leadership that was displayed by our President Oliver Reginald Tambo. Keep it up, President. The leadership that you displayed also in our economic reconstruction and recovery plan is a clear illustration of that sense of leadership. President, you will concede that there is consensus that theft and destruction of public rail is a challenge. And this you have also displayed by signing on July 20 the Critical Infrastructure Act, which indeed is also a reinforcement to the Criminal Amendment Act, which is mainly geared towards punishing the perpetrators of economic sabotage. In this regard, it will be interesting to know from the President whether has there been any multidisciplinary study that was conducted to ensure the efficacy of the existing legislation to mete out appropriate punishment for this crime? If not, why not? And if so, what are the relevant details? Thank you, President.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable Moimang. Honorable Chairperson, yes, we have been working on a multidisciplinary process to be able to ensure that those who have committed acts of vandalism, acts of criminality are identified and brought to book. Because we cannot just carry on as though nothing has happened when people have actively vandalized our infrastructure. Those who vandalize infrastructure are acting against the people of South Africa. And we therefore need to ensure that they are dealt with and effectively. So as we protect this infrastructure, we also are embarking on making sure that we identify very, very thoroughly those who have been involved in vandalizing and destroying and stealing infrastructure that is meant to support the livelihoods of our people. So we will be proceeding, and it will be foolhardy to give the full details here, because we don't want to make those people who've been involved in this any wiser, because we've got to make sure that we stop the scourge of destroying infrastructure that is meant to improve the quality of life of our people as they travel from place to place. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much. The second supplementary question comes from Honorable Arnolds. Arnolds.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Chairperson. Mr. President, indeed, theft and vandalism of critical railway infrastructure not only places the lives and livelihoods of those who rely on trains in danger, but also dire consequences for the economy. But bearing in mind, Mr. President, that it is your government that has presided over the systematic degradation of public transport infrastructure. And without a reliable and dependable public transport system, there will be no economic growth in the country. So we need to hear from you the specific targets, because every time you're coming and with decisive measures to improve, but I think we need to see those targets in terms of what you are saying. And then what will you do to ensure that the rail system is protected from vandalism? You have mentioned some of it, but I think if we go out and if we ask communities, we can see there's no tangible difference in what we see in the country. And then the other question is, have you find out that these acts of vandalism are deliberately the acts of sabotage? Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Do we have reliable targets? The answer is yes. And what steps are we taking? We're taking lots of steps. And as I said earlier, we've going to be implementing a number of projects supported by the finance that the Treasury has allocated. We're going to make sure that we beef up the security at the key rail installations, and we make sure that using technology, we are then able to identify those who get involved in criminality. We will be using drones to oversee the rail lines. We will be using all manner of technology, and security effort that we are going to put into this is aimed at ensuring that there is no vandalizing of these important assets. You're absolutely right, Honorable Arnold, that the transport system is extremely important, and our task is to safeguard that, and our task is to ensure that it works as efficiently as possible, because it is really the lifeline that supports our economy. People being able to move up and down, being economically active, can only happen if you've got an important rail line being supported by a variety of initiatives that we are going to embark upon. So I can assure you that we are going to protect our rail line. We've got funding that has been set aside for that, and that is our aim, and that is our resolve. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you very much. The next supplementary question, the third one is from Honorable Detroit. Honorable Detroit.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Mr. President, it's quite a coincidence. During the lockdown period, I posed a written question to you that speaks to priorities of crime prevention. And if you allow me, I want to quote 2 paragraphs of the answer that I received. Open quotes, the operational deployment of SAPS members is informed by the crime threat analysis and the crime pattern analysis. The outcome of these analysis guides the deployment of resources in response to identified crime threats, irrespective of the geographical location. And then the last paragraph, government is committed to a crime prevention approach that values lives and the property of all South Africans equally, and will continue to deploy law enforcement personnel and other resources according to the assessed need. Now, Mr. President, during the lockdown period, between 230 and 300,000 South Africans were arrested for contraventions of the COVID regulations. And if your answer that you gave me is correct, my question is, the crime pattern analysis and the crime threat analysis, was that not done with regards to the vandalism caused on railways and about 2,000 schools? That's the first one. And if I can make a note, if we did act, if government did act according to crime threat analysis that was supposed to have been made, 900 million rand from the PRASA security plan wouldn't have had to be spent now at this time. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Well, this is funding that has been found to be necessary to both deal with the security situation and in some instances also to see how best we can identify the way in which we can restore what has been destroyed. So this is necessary money that will help to deal with this very situation. We could go into a lengthy conversation about what led people to embark on acts of vandalism in the way that they did. They were motivated by a variety of things. Could have been frustration, it could have been criminal act, particularly those who vandalized schools, which I found also most disturbing, just as disturbing as I found the vandalizing of rail network stations. So all these things have to be looked at in a holistic manner. We need to look at them and try to curb them as much as we possibly can. Indeed, we need to curb school vandalization. We need to curb station vandalization, rail line vandalization. So our problem is multifarious. It's very broad, and we cannot just limit our problem to one area only. We need to look at all, and I'm sure that when we do so, we will find that we are able to find solutions, because we will be doing so in a much clearer and pointed way. So I'm confident that with the efforts that we are now going to put in place, we will be able to go to the bottom of what causes people to embark on these acts. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much. The last supplementary question is from Honorable T.J. Protestant. Tim.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for your brilliant handling of the session today. Mr. President, of all the freight moved in South Africa, only 3% of that freight is moved by rail. And that has had a massive impact on our national roads network. And this has primarily been as a result of the theft and vandalism of our rail infrastructure. Now, Mr. President, when you were Deputy President and I was a member of the National Assembly, we passed the Criminal Matters Amendment Act in the National Assembly, and it came into effect on the 1st of June 2016. That act allowed the state to impose a sentence of up to 30 years of somebody who vandalized or stole state infrastructure, such as rail infrastructure. Unfortunately, the government which you now lead, Mr. President, failed in its duty to have an implementation plan. And as a result, the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act, which Honourable Moyamang referred to, was only passed. In fact, it was only presented to you for your signature in December 2019 and only came into effect this year. The end result of that, Mr. President, the end result of the dilly-dallying of your government is that since 2016, there has been only one conviction in terms of that legislation. Now, Mr. President, can you explain why your government has waited 4 years to get the right qualifying legislation in place to properly deal with the miscreants that are stealing and vandalizing our rail infrastructure and costing our South Africans billions and billions of rands? Can you please answer why your government has failed in that regard? Thank you.
Honourable President.
Thank you very much. If you care to know, I'm just as frustrated as you are about the length of time we take to either pass an amendment or pass a law. I think the lead time to passing laws that should be aimed at solving social problems, economic problems, needs to be much shortened. We need to see the time that we take to embark on law process, reform or otherwise, being much more shortened. And yes, we do find that in the course of time, we are unable to effect the changes that will enhance economic performance, that will also improve the lives of our people, and the criminal activity just continues to increase. So I'm just as frustrated as you are, and I'd like to see that addressed. And I'd like to see how we can shorten that time so that we don't wait for too long to have laws amended or passed in Parliament. But having said that, our resolve is now much more stronger. And there would have been a number of problems where, for instance, the criminal justice system was not as alert as it should have been on a number of these matters, on getting convictions. I think we are now going to get into top gear. We're now going to be able to ensure that those who get involved in acts of malfeasance are able to face the might of the law as quickly as possible. It should never have been that in all this period, only one person has been able to get a conviction. Our intention is very, very clear in terms of the Criminal Matters Amendment Act, that in the end, we do want severe sentences of up to 30 years for people found guilty of these horrible and horrendous criminal activities. We will get there. The resolve is there. I'm particularly pleased with the way that our criminal justice entities are now functioning, because they will leave no stone unturned in order to make sure that things are done properly in our country, within the parameters of the laws that we have. That is what gives me hope. We're returning to a state that most South Africans have always yearned to see, that our institutions work better, that our institutions are seen to be working for all the people of South Africa and not just a few. So we are on the way to being better and to reforming, and I look forward to walking this journey with all of you as we move forward, indeed, to build the South Africa, yes, the South Africa of our dreams. I would like to know that we are doing this collectively as the state, with the House of our provinces, National House of our provinces, as well as the National Assembly, and all of us in the executive working together with the various entities that make up our state, including the judiciary. This, Honorable Chairperson, is a promise that we've made to the people of South Africa. All of us, as we were sworn in as members of this parliament, I think it's a promise that we must keep up to. And I say, moving forward, we're going to make things happen, and they're going to be a lot brighter. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable President. As we conclude, honorable members,
raise a point of order,
please allow me to thank the President on behalf of the NCOP for availing himself to answer our questions.
Point of order, please.
Delegates, that concludes the business of the day.
Thank you.
The House is now adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Long
live
the
President. Long live the President. Long live President. Thank you. President.
Honorable Mai. Go
President.
Now you can bring your